Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shane Carter. I'm a licensure coordinator with Teacher Licensure and Accreditation, and today I'm going to cover for Hot Topics information on the Educator data collection system, as most school districts are in the middle of submitting their licensed personnel report. So I thought I would cover some information related to some issues that districts have been having throughout the state. So we'll kind of go through the EDCS Top 10. This is the agenda that we'll cover on this timeline, or through this training. So EDCS relevance. So why is it important? Well, EDCS is a system that we use to collect the licensed personnel report. We also use it to collect vacancy report information, and all this information that is collected, it's used to meet federal reporting requirements and state board reporting requirements, as well as we have numerous requests, core requests that are filled through different organizations across the United States, which they pull and review this information. So I'd like to highlight the importance of reporting accurate information when you complete your licensed personnel report and vacancy reports. On a separate note, the vacancy reports, the information that we collect and gather as part of that report is used to kind of identify vacancies across the state, so we can identify a plan or create a plan to work to improve and kind of attack those vacancies that we have across the state. Also, in the future, you will be submitting the mentor programs report or mentor programs application. EDCS is a system that we use to audit that information that is reported by the districts. So once again, you want to make sure that's accurate, because that could potentially affect reimbursement for some educators. Also, in the future, the timely submission of the licensed personnel report within EDCS will be used as part of the accreditation process for each district or private school. Just a reminder on the timeline, the report is due March 1st. When you submit your licensed personnel report, you will also simultaneously submit your spring vacancy report. A few updates that were implemented this school year. Race and ethnicity was removed from the system. We capture this information in our license application system, so we decided it was a bit redundant to have the districts to continue to report this information through EDCS, so we removed it. When we did the removal, this did affect our staff files, that if you are the district that imports files to complete your report, those specifications did change. All this information was posted. It's posted in the Licensed Personnel Guide and posted in the EDCS user manual that's located within EDCS. So if you are having an issue with your files, please contact me and let me know. Also, we created 2 new entrance codes this year. There's the first year transitioning to teaching. This is for individuals that hold a restricted teaching license, restricted technical certificate, specialized technical certificate, limited apprentice license, and if they're in their first year of teaching with you, you need to select the first year transitioning to teaching. Now, if they're returning, you'll just list them as returning staff like other educators in your district. We also made a change to one of the entrance codes, changed it to from business and industry. So if an individual was a former educator who left to work in private industry or a business field or government and then returned to the education profession, you will use this entrance code to capture their status. An example would be is if you had an educator that worked at KSDE, left your district, and then they came back, you would use the From Business and Industry code for that individual when you were filling out your report. And we updated the LPR guide and the user manual for this school year. So as far as vacancies, there has in the past been some misunderstanding about what is a valid vacancy. First of all, there's no negative ramifications for reporting a vacancy. Once again, we use this to collect data across the state to identify where and what type of vacancies we have. That way we can build an action plan to get after the vacancies. So what is a vacancy? So positions that are filled by substitute teachers are considered a vacancy unless that substitute teacher is filling in for a contracted teacher on a short-term leave of absence, such as maternity leave or some other type of sick leave, or if they're filling in for someone that's on military or some other type of leave of absence, then that would not be an actual vacancy because you have a hired contracted teacher that's being filled in for. Now, positions that are filled by teachers who aren't licensed appropriately, for instance, if an individual holds a social studies license, history, government, social studies license, and is filling a English language arts position, then that would be listed as a vacancy because you actually need a individual that holds a license for English language arts. Therefore, though you have an individual with a teaching license, they're not licensed appropriately to perform or to provide that instruction. So you need to list that individual. Any teachers that are on waivers, provisional licenses, restricted licenses, part of the limited apprentice program or the pilot license program, these are not considered vacancies as they've been issued either a waiver or some type of license to teach in that position that they're filling. So do not report them as a vacancy. And once again, when you submit your licensed personnel report, the spring vacancy report will be simultaneously submitted, and it's due March 1st once again. So shared staff, this has been an issue for quite a few districts, how to actually report shared staff, and there's been some confusion between co-ops and districts, and then I'd like to take a moment to try to clarify what the actual responsibilities are. So first off, you have to identify if you are a hiring district or if you're a receiving district. The hiring district has a few different responsibilities as compared to the receiving district. So the hiring district, they're responsible to enter demographic information such as the years of experience and salary within EDCS for that staff member, and then they also have to split that FTE amongst all receiving districts who receive services from that individual. Now, if the individual provides services only to an outside district, then there is a shared staff button that the hiring district will select, and that indicates that they're not providing any services to that actual district. Now, the receiving district, what you're required to do is you have to go into your shared staff, accept that educator. Once you accept them, you'll add them to a building. After you add them to a building, you'll add that specific assignment that they teach for your actual school district. In the case that you're unable to get information in the receiving district and you're unable to get information from your hiring district, there is an option for you to go in and manually add someone by entering in either their social and educator ID. If you choose to do this option, you will add them just like any other. You will add them through the shared staff function, and then add them to a building, and then add the assignments, and then you're done for that particular educator. So we'll go over a couple of scenarios. There's 4 scenarios that we'll go through that hopefully can serve as examples and kind of clear up some confusion that can be generated between districts when they're trying to report shared staff. So in this first scenario, it's pretty standard. It's a co-op that's providing an educator to a district to provide support services to a district's students. And this is probably one of our most common types of scenarios. So the co-op, they are the hiring district, so they're required to enter the individual in EDCS, enter in their demographic information, years of experience, add their FTE, and then share that individual with the receiving district. The receiving district, they're required to go in and accept that individual, add them to a building, and then add their assignments. Okay, scenario 2, it's very similar. It's instead of a co-op, we're just using 2 districts. So the same type of relationship. One district is the hiring district, so they have to add the educator in EDCS, add their demographic information, salary, experience, add the FTE or split the FTE appropriately, and then share that individual with the receiving district. The receiving district goes in, accepts that educator, adds them to the specific building where they're providing their services, and adds the specific assignments as required. So for this third scenario, it's a little different. The only difference is we added additional receiving district, and the hiring district is the teacher is also teaching in the hiring district as well. So the big changes are, one, the district adds the individual just like anyone, just like in the other scenarios, adds the demographic information, splits the FTE amongst the 2 receiving districts, and also has to split the FTE amongst itself internally as that educator is providing services to the hiring district students. So the hiring district will, after they add them, they will have to add that individual to the building where they provide instruction, and then add assignments to that individual. As far as the two receiving districts, they follow the same process. They go in and accept the individual, add them to the appropriate building, and then add specific assignments as necessary. On the final scenario, it's very similar to the last scenario in that the hiring district is receiving services from the educator as well, and then two other receiving districts are receiving services. The only kind of red herring that we threw in there was the distance learning instruction via web service. That doesn't really have an impact in this situation. Anytime an individual, if it's through web service or some other type of location that your students receive services, you're not going to have access to another building. So as a receiving district, whenever you're adding that educator and adding the assignments to that educator, you add them to the specific building where that student would normally receive instruction. If it's a middle school student, then you would assign them to your middle school building and report them that way. So as far as the responsibilities, the hiring district, once again, adds the individual's demographic information, splits the FTE, lists the salary, lists the experience, shares the individual with the two receiving districts. In this case, would also have to add that educator to a specific building and add assignments because the teacher is providing services to the hiring district students. The two receiving districts go in, accept the individual, add them to the appropriate building, and then add the appropriate assignments to the educator. Another issue that can cause confusion is special education reporting. So there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind because it determines on how you will map courses within KCCMS and how you will find them in the system in EDCS. So number one, you need to determine if an individual is teaching both content and special education. If an individual is teaching content and special education, then you need to report the assignment with the appropriate content course code, and within KCCMS you'll have the course mapped as targeted programs for SPED. Within the system, there is an option when you're mapping that for those core classes, so your math, English, history, government, social studies, and science classes, that when you're mapping them, you can have them listed below grade level, that'll actually impact the type of license one holds to be appropriate license to teach that content area, which I'll cover on the next slide. Also, when you're teaching content, you have the option, you can report a co-teacher. So for that co-teacher relationship, you would have one individual that holds the special education endorsement, and they would be providing support services, and then you would have a separate licensed individual that is licensed in the content area that's providing that general content instruction. And then I'll go over how you report that in the system on the next slide as well. The other option when you're reporting special education is if an individual is simply providing support services, and then if that's the case when you're within EDCS, you'll select educator type special education, and then there's a drop-down list of different support services that you can provide for that for a particular assignment. So you just pick the appropriate one that pertains to your particular situation. So for actual reporting, we'll start with the content instruction, and there is a difference between the high individual that's providing high incidence services and low incidence. If an individual is licensed for high incidence and they're providing those support services and they're providing content instruction, they have to hold the high incidence license at the grade level and the content endorsement at the grade level as well to be appropriately licensed to teach that position. If an individual holds a low incidence license, the low incidence license at the grade level suffices. It allows the individual to teach both content and provide special education endorsements. On the previous slide, I mentioned below grade level, so there is the option when you map a class, you can have it mapped for significantly below grade level. The impact this has is for high incidence teaching or for an individual that holds a high incidence license. It allows them to have a general content endorsement license one grade level below what is typically required for that particular assignment. Example, that may have been a little cloudy. So, for instance, let's say a high incidence teacher is teaching math to a 9th grade student. So that individual would have to hold the high incidence endorsement at the 6 to 12 level, and then would also need a minimum of a middle level math endorsement of 5 to 8. Since it is a 9th grade student, one license below, or a grade, the license for the grade level below 9th is checked, so that 5 to 8 is appropriate, instead of needing the full 6 to 12 secondary endorsement to teach that 9th grade student. Co-teachers, so we discussed on the previous slide as well. So when you're adding an individual, adding an assignment within EDCS, if you add that special education assignment to one of your teachers, there's a box where you can select for co-teacher. You check the box, and then you can enter in the co-teacher's educator ID. This will automatically add that assignment information to that teacher, and when there's a check done in the staff assignment report, it will check both educators' license endorsement areas to make sure that the combination of the two educators meet licensing requirements to provide that specific instruction. So you don't have to go in and manually add that assignment to each educator. Just select the co-teacher checkbox and then add in the educator ID. CTE reporting. So a lot of issues with this. So in order to actually find a class in EDCS, a CTE course has to be not only approved through Pathways, it has to be approved through Pathways, and it also has to be mapped within KCCMS. If there's an issue in the Pathway system or KCCMS, you will not be able to find that, that assignment within EDCS. Also, when you're doing a check, I recommend you always check both career and technical education, which is educator type 5, and also secondary teacher, which is educator type 3, to see if possibly there was some issue with your mapping where you find the course under secondary teacher instead of under the career and technical education teacher. As far as CTE, keep in mind that CTE courses are only available in the high school building. So if you do have one of those career exploration courses or introductory courses that's in the 7th or 8th grade, you have to add that particular assignment to the high school. You would add that educator to the high school, but when you actually add the grade levels, you can select 7th or 8th grade. Though it's a high school class, since it's CTE, it'll give you the option to select 7th or 8th grade. You will not be able to add that to your middle school building. Also keep in mind, Pathways are approved 1 year ahead of what you're reporting in EDCS. So currently in EDCS, you're filling out information for the 1920 school year. Pathways are being approved right now for the 2021 school year. So make sure when you're doing your search for your courses, you don't mix up your 2021 Pathway courses with what you're trying to report for the 1920 school year. So always check that out. And then once again, if you're in EDCS, you can't find that CTE course, then let me know. Then we can get in contact with the KCCMS help desk and the Pathways help desk to kind of troubleshoot and see if there was an issue on the Pathway side or on the mapping side. So a little information about functionality. So as far as, and this kind of feeds into the staff assignment report, if you wondered how the system actually generates or identifies individuals that may not be licensed appropriately, well, EDCS pulls information based on that Social Security number from our licensing system. So it pulls the information that pulls that educator's endorsements and type of license that he or she holds, and once it pulls it, it applies that to the course code that's been entered in for their assignment. So that's kind of how that check works. EDCS pulls from our licensing system. As far as all the courses that you find within EDCS, every course has to be mapped within KCCMS. And then once again, if it's a Pathway course, it has to be approved in Pathways as well. A couple other things, districts have the option. They can either roll over data or do a file upload when starting to fill out your licensed personnel report. You can actually do a combination of both, but if you're rolling over, let's say, your staff data, you shouldn't then try to upload a file with your staff data. You should choose one or other. I mean, the system will allow you to do it for staff data, but it doesn't allow you to do it for FTE data. If you roll over FTE data and then try to do an FTE file upload, it's going to give a cumulative FTE error. So basically saying when you try to upload that file that your FTE has exceeded 1. So it's better if you're going to do one, not both, in other words. So when you're doing your file uploads, they need to be done in this order. Do it exited staff, then staff data, then FTE data, then assignment data, and then you can move on to shared staff if necessary. If you get them out of sequence, so let's say you tried to upload your FTE data before your staff data. When you try to upload that FTE data, there's not information in there to add to the record. So it's looking for that educator staff data. It has to be in there first before you can actually add the FTE data. So once again, follow that order and you shouldn't have issues. And finally, if you've rolled over some of your information and then you decided you wanted to upload a file, or if maybe you have multiple people that have been working in the system and there's confusion and you just need to clean everything out and start over, there's a delete staff function that'll allow you to delete partial information, or you can delete everything that you've entered in for the 1920 school year and then start your report over. But be aware, if you are working with other individuals that, like if your pathways folks or your special education folks go in and enter assignments for their particular areas, then you want to make sure you contact them before you delete all the information that's in the system, because you may delete information that they had entered that was correct. There are multiple reports that you can use within EDCS. So one is the summary report. So this allows you to pull previous information that you reported. It's very similar to the LPR data report. So if you wanted to check and see what type of an assignment you reported for a specific educator 2 to 3 years ago, you can use that summary report and pull that information up. The EDCS data report, that allows you to pull your current school year data. So for 1920 school year, you want to see what you reported, what assignment you added to a specific teacher. You can pull this, use this report and find that information. The LPR data report, it allows you to pull previously submitted LPR data from different school years. It doesn't function for the 1920 school year until after you've submitted the LPR. So after March 1st, that and we finish with the LPR submission, you'll be able to pull the LPR data report. Also, the staff assignment report, also commonly known as the kickout report. This is used to help districts identify individuals that may not be appropriately licensed. And once you identify those individuals, then you can work on trying to get them appropriately licensed for those specific assignments. So a few best practices. Well, the first one's probably a little late since we're less than 30 days out from submission of the LPR. It's to start early, and many districts have, so we appreciate that. Make sure you use the manuals, both the EDCS and the LPR guide. Both have their links within EDCS that contain these manuals, and we also have links on our licensed personnel webpage where you can pull the EDCS user manual and LPR guide. And finally, know your district POCs for KCCO Math and Pathways, and I should also throw in special education in here as well, because if you're working at the clerk, you're working at the board office, and you may not know some of the specific information, the specific details for certain assignments. So it's key that you're involved with your district POCs, whether it's a building administrator or if you have other personnel that are identified, such as a curriculum director that kind of assist with this report. Make sure you're in contact with them as you're filling out your report. That concludes my presentation for today. So if you are filling out your licensed personnel report and you do have issues, please feel free to contact me. Once again, my name is Shane Carter. My email address is scarter, SCARTER, @ksde.org, or you can reach me via phone at 785-296-8011. Thank you and have a great day.